from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Rev Carlos Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I'm Rev Carlos Harrison, and on this episode, we just had an election here in Indianapolis, and today I have two guests with me, Rev Carlos Perkins, who was a newly elected City-County Council member for District 6, and Annette Johnson, who is the Pike Township Trustee. We're going to talk a little bit about the election and politics in Indianapolis. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Rev Carlos Harrison, and my co-host is Rev Terry Webster Senior, and he is not here with me today. So I have two very special guests with me on this podcast today. Reverend Carlos Perkins, he's the pastor of Bethel AME Church here in Indianapolis, and he is now the newly elected City County Council member, District 6.
Correct.
Okay. And a good friend of mine, Pike Township Trustee, the mayor of Pike Township, Annette Johnson. It is so good to have both of you with me today. Well, hello.
Hello. Good day. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here with the trustee, the mayor for Pike Township, Annette Johnson.
Yeah, I tell her all the time she's running things over there. She's the mayor of Pike Township. So, Reverend Perkins, tell us a little bit about yourself, particularly for the listeners. You are a pastor here in Indianapolis. My colleague, Methodist colleague.
Absolutely.
You know. But what I'm interested in is what led you to decide to go into politics and to run for the City County Council? And then kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
So again, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having us here today. I am honored and privileged to serve as a senior pastor for Bethel Cathedral, African Methodist Episcopal Church. And I oftentimes
you put that cathedral in there, huh?
Yes, I oftentimes share. Bethel is the oldest black church in the city of Indianapolis, established in 1836. On the second Sunday of December this year, we will celebrate 187 years.
Wow.
And so I'm honored to serve as a pastor. I am in my 6th year as a pastor of Bethel Church. Came to Indianapolis in 2018 after leaving a pastoral appointment in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the 16th Episcopal District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And right away decided to jump right into not only serving the Bethel Cathedral family, but serving the community in Pike Township. Bethel is fairly new to Pike Township. For 179 years. We were located down on the canal at 414 West Vermont Street. But between 2016 and 2018, the congregation moved to Pike Township, built a brand new sanctuary, and decided with the leading of the Holy Spirit that that's where God would have us to do ministry. And we are clear, Pastor, that our assignment was not only to the church and not only to that moved congregation, but to the entire community. Okay. And so our involvement in elected office was really rooted in our desire, in our vision, and the vision from God to serve the Pike Township community. Starting in 2018, once we got here, we linked up with the trustee, along with a number of pastors and leaders in Pike Township to ensure that we are serving the Pike Township community. And so that has been the genesis of my involvement and my motivation to get into politics. We'll talk a little bit about the work that we have done in Faith in Indiana and the Black Church Coalition, a little bit of work with the trustees' leadership, initially establishing a clergy pastor advisory team to the trustees' office, which really got us started back in 2018. And so we're honored. I'm thankful for the residents of District 6 who entrusted me to be their City County Council representative. And so it's just good to be here and good to do the work that God has called us to do.
Trustee Johnson, I know you had, you've been really working closely with pastors, in Pike Township. And what kind of led you, to do that and some of the initiatives you have done there? And then your relationship with Pastor Perkins.
Well, again, thank you for this opportunity, Rev Harrison. Me and you go back a long way. We have
don't tell them how long now.
Right, we have been working on so many initiatives in the city of Indianapolis and just different types of programs and activities. But I think what has really led me down this pathway is the faith-based group. It's because I come from a very strong faith-based background. My mom was a minister, and she instilled that community, faith-based, the church all goes hand in hand. Yeah. And I've always brought that alongside with this office of being, the trustee of Pike Township. And so that's where it started. And I knew when I set out to run for trustee in 2018 that I wanted to put together a faith-based group of churches and ministers and clergy in Pike Township so we all could come together and work on the needs for the township of Pike. And I thought that's very important. And then, hold and behold, I met this gentleman when he first moved into Pike Township. I had a relationship with the previous pastor, and he unfortunately was dealing with some serious health issues. Okay. And we knew that his time was limited here on earth. And we had conversations. I tell this to Perkins, long time ago. We were in great conversations at his home next to the church. Mm-hmm. And he said what he wanted for Pike Township was to have a strong leader, and he wanted to make sure that the church was part of the community since it was moving into Pike Township, because it hadn't moved there yet. It was still in the organizational part of it. And I met Dr. Perkins immediately. And what I love about him and what I tell everybody, as soon as he moved into Pike, he reached out to me. Okay. And that's, to me, how it should be done. You reach out to the leaders. Right. And I immediately put Perkins on every committee I could think of. I was sending it to him. I mean, he was getting tired of me.
Pastor, she'll put you to work now.
She will, without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
And I was like, Perkins, I need you to do this, or I need you to be here. I can give you an example just from Wednesday. This week. We were on the campaign trail all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Right. Just exhausted. Right. And then Tuesday was the election. Of course, we had worked so hard in the previous months that we made sure that Perkins was going to be safe. So he didn't have an opponent, but we worked just as hard like we had one. The next day, I had 2 community meetings, and I reached out to Perkins and said, I need you to be there, and he was at them.
Amen. So what are the issues? And I know you've been very involved in issues within education. Yep. You talked about faith in Indiana, and also the Black Church Coalition. What were some of the issues that were a driving force in the Pike Township, and really, encourage you to get involved in politics?
Oh, absolutely. So I think a lot of folks don't necessarily know about me that I have been bivocational over the last 24 years, both in ministry while simultaneously being an educator. Prior to January of this year, I served as a principal. I've been a high school principal for the last 14 years.
See, I didn't know that.
Absolutely. The last time serving as the principal of Pike Preparatory Academy, the alternative school within Metropolitan School District of Pike Township. And so education has always been a part of my blood. It's always been my desire to serve in an alternative high school setting where I had the opportunity for 14 years as a principal to serve some of our most disengaged youth, some of our most at-risk youth. I can tell you about the work that we did in Washington, D.C., leading a school there with young people that were court involved, the juveniles that were part of the system, that our goal was to get them a high school diploma because we know that education will give them an opportunity. We could talk about the work we did at the U.S. Virgin Islands while I was there serving as a principal. of the alternative school, and then since I've been here serving in Pike at Pike Preparatory Academy. But a couple of the things that really drove us to get to the point of running and connecting with the trustee in Pike Township. One, we believe that the congregation is community.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If you look in our neighborhoods, the history of Bethel Church being on Indian Avenue, being in the first Black community in Indianapolis, Bethel Cathedral as a congregation has always been a part of the community. We've always been an anchor institution before we were allowed to go into other schools, before we were allowed to go into other healthcare facilities. The church as an anchor institution in our community provided what the community needed. Mm-hmm. And so that's the motivation for us. That's the muscle memory, as I oftentimes share with my congregation, that we have, that we've always been about community work. Mm-hmm. And so when I got here in 2018, a couple of things really kind of came to the forefront for me. Okay. I got involved with Faith in Indiana and the Black Church Coalition around community organizing.
Okay.
The idea that we not only elect individuals into office, but we need to hold them accountable when it's not an election year to do what they promise to do.
Okay.
That we believe that as community members, we can co-govern, co-create with those that we've elected in office. And so through the Black Church Coalition, we brought together faith leaders across the city to engage in a listening tour, to engage in community organizing, to hear from the community those things that are important. And back in 2019, going into 2020 into 21, we heard from the community that there were three things that were of concern to the community.
Okay.
First of which was mental health response, crisis mental health. Mm-hmm. When we have a family member, a community member that's in crisis, prior to this year, the only option that our residents has was they had to call IMPD. They had to call the police. And we feel like our residents deserve another option.
Okay.
And so we heard from the community that mental health crisis response is a priority. We heard from the community that the reduction of gun violence, we know, we see it, we experience it every day in Indianapolis, that there has to be a reduction in gun violence. Where are young people getting the guns from? How do we provide the education, provide the safety, provide the community for those that are most vulnerable so that they don't get exposed to the ills of society? And then thirdly, we heard clearly that they needed accountability for our police officers, that they believe, the community believes, that officers are exercising authority. And whenever officers show up to a scene, no matter what it is, if there's a Black male, that there tend to be a result where that person is hurt or killed. And so that's what we heard from the community.
Right.
We took that, we went to the mayor's office, we went to the chief of police to say, this is what we're hearing from the community. And unfortunately, on the eve of the mental health response, after we had a political action, that same month is when Herman Whitfield was killed in his home. And that really propelled us forward to work and to co-create with the mayor and the police chief to make sure that we have funds that were put in the budget for crisis response. And I'm happy to say that not only is the city of Indianapolis has established a crisis response team that is now operational and hopefully will be expanded over the next couple of months, we have been able to advocate to the State House to get funds in the state budget to put towards mental health and crisis response. That is community work.
Okay.
That is the genesis of why we ran. It's the genesis of why we're here, a community that believes in us and that believe that they can co-create together. And that's not short of the work that the trustee has done in Pike Township to make sure that those things are known and that we are standing in the gap for those community members that we serve.
One of the questions I want to ask, and maybe throw it out to both of you, is this whole issue of mental health and the stigma within the Black community that it is something that we didn't always acknowledge, nor, as a pastor myself, got help for. And it seems to be at a crisis state right now in our community, and we probably could talk about a lot of the driving forces, but can y'all talk about the conversations around that within our community, the stigma around this whole thing of mental health?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if the trustee want to jump in on this as well.
Yeah.
But I live this. I've lived this for the last 23 years. Folks might not know I'm married to a clinical social worker.
Okay.
She's been a clinician for the last 20 years. We've been married for 21 years. So this is in my home. This is what we think and talk about of how do we destigmatize mental health within our faith communities. 2 years ago, through a small grant that we received as Bethel Cathedral, we ran a community conversation, a 4-part series on you can have Jesus and a therapist.
Okay. Amen.
and the response from our congregation was tremendous.
Wow.
Believe it or not, for 4 Sundays out of the year, we suspended what we traditionally experience in the Black church context of preaching, and invited professionals who are therapists, who are community organizers, who are doing the work of mental health response to have a panel discussion that we opened to the entire congregation, both in person and virtually, to talk about mental health. And the response was tremendous. The response that we got when we were doing the session and even post the session, to say from our community members and our congregants to say, Pastor, thank you for tackling this issue, because I'm struggling with my mental health. Or I know somebody that's struggling. I have a son or a grandson or granddaughter that is experiencing depression, and I don't know what to do. We have prayed, and we still believe in the power of deliverance. We still believe in the power of the Holy Spirit working through us. But we also believe that God empowers allow and gifts others to help us to create a framework in our mind of how to interact with the world that we live in. The fact is, post-pandemic, as we're navigating this, we have seen more individuals seeking mental health support, because the pandemic is still impacting us. And what the pandemic did for us, especially the Black and brown community, was that it not only exposed issues of access to health, It exposed for us issues of mental health, undiagnosed, that we haven't dealt with. And so folks were home, locked in, and said, oh, I need to live with myself, and I don't like myself. So, for us as a pastor, as a faith leader, it is a priority for me to say, we're going to pray. And we still believe in the power of deliverance. But we're also going to afford you the opportunity to connect with those that are trained to be able to counsel, to be able to engage in conversations, whether that individually or in groups, so that you can deal with some of the challenges that you're experiencing.
Trustee Johnson, what can be done? And I wrote down the 3 issues that y'all talked about, that you heard from the community: mental health, gun violence, and accountability for law enforcement, in those situations where excessive force or deadly force was used that may not have been appropriate. What can your office do, or how are you working as the trustee to help address those issues in Pike Township?
I think what's important, what my office has done, is we've opened up the office to bring some, together individuals to speak about it, to talk about it, to have the forums and the workshops. And so those are some things that I want to do. And I'm so, again, excited that Dr. Perkins will be our city council for District 6, because I'm hoping that we will be able to get some funding so that we can do some workshops. We can do some town hall forums for people to come out and to talk about mental health, and then also have individuals from, with that background and with that experience to be there to address their concerns. Hopefully, if they're able to get some help, those particular individuals will be on site to provide that need. So those are the things that we are working on for 2024, things that we want to do coming down the wire. I want to make sure that the trustee's office is an open concept for these types of conversations to take place, but not just have a conversation, but also offer the services there, have the individuals that are working in those capacities to be there and address those needs as well.
And I think, can I just share from the trustee's perspective that there are individuals in our communities that are doing great work. a part of the role that I see the trustee's office is really bringing us all together and providing the exposure to the community that these programs exist.
Exactly.
Right. So initially, when we came together as clergy under the leadership of the trustee, we would come together monthly or bi-monthly to say, what are some of the things that are happening in your local congregation?
Right.
And how can we be of support? Right? How can we help exposure? How can we provide this information to the community? Right? And so there are a number of individuals, because I don't want us to feel like, we have to do everything.
Right.
Sometimes the work is just coordinating.
Right.
Sometimes the work is just exposure. And especially as we talk about in our Black and Brown community this issue around mental health and destigmatizing, seeking support and services, that we have to say to the community, there are mental health clinicians, providers out there that look like you, that understand your context, understand your culture, and can provide support to you from a culturally competent perspective. My wife drives this home for us all the time. That is one thing to have a counselor. It's something else to have a counselor that understands your content. And so under the leadership of the trustee, we're able to bring together some of the services that are available within Pike Township. And we want to do more of that, right? We want folks that are providing services, providing supports, that you might have an open house. You might have a group therapy session. You might have clinicians that are willing to volunteer their time to provide pro bono services to members of the community, to reach out to us to say, here I am, I'm willing to serve, I have this level of expertise. We just need the community to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So as a city council member, you will be starting in January. I think one of the concerns, and I see it in the work that I do with 10 Point, I see it as a pastor, but also my wife and I adopted 2 foster children, and both experienced trauma.
Yes.
At a very young age, and with all the gun violence that we are experiencing in many of our communities, I think it's undiagnosed with a lot of young people, the number of friends and family members that have been shot or injured or shot or killed. Yes. And I'm not for sure it's being addressed. And then in our case, we felt like we didn't know where to go, where the services were, where to get help. Beyond, taking our child to the hospital for 6 or 7 days, beyond that, it felt like it wasn't much help out there.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that as a community we need to acknowledge is that, like, trauma is not static.
Right. You
just don't experience a traumatic event,
right,
and it stays there, and that's your only experience in trauma.
Right.
And this is accessing my little bit of my counseling human development background. Right. There are many of us that live in a cycle of trauma. Right. As much as the district residents trusted me and elected me as a city-county councilor, as much as I'm a pastor, as much as I'm an educator, there is a cycle that kicks in for me if I'm driving down 65 and a police officer turns their light on. That's a cycle of trauma that we live in.
Right.
There is a cycle that we live in if we're home and we hear the ambulance outside. There's something that triggers because of our experience in the past. And so one is an acknowledgement that trauma is not static. It just doesn't happen and go away.
Right.
That many of us live in a cycle of trauma. For many of our young people and many of our even adults, they're being re-traumatized on a daily basis. And it is incumbent on us, as those of us that have been elected, that are elected official or leaders within our communities, clergy, the faith leaders, or elected officials, or business leaders, to come together to see how do we provide the services and support that our communities need to address some of the issues that they're going through, starting within our school system. So there have been continuous conversation around the role of social workers or school counselors in providing support to students. If you look in our school system, many of our schools, they don't have access to the number of social workers that they need, right?
Okay.
I'm happy to say that, we've built out some of the programs in Pike, and so the public school in Pike does have social workers. They have access to social workers, but the fact is we're still not reaching everybody.
Okay.
And so so making those services available. As we are expanding our community services, either through faith-based organizations, through governmental agencies, through nonprofit organizations that are effective in doing the work. There are a number of nonprofits out there. We're talking about the ones that are effective in doing the work. That we need to make sure that there is a way and there's somewhere where we are cataloging that information so when folks need it, they know how to access it. There's services there. Our community and our residents just don't always know how to access it. Right? So we get calls all the time, whether at church or at home, because I share with you that my wife is a clinician that says, Pastor, we heard that you're talking about mental health. I have a son, I have a grandson, I have a granddaughter that's experiencing this. Where can we go? Or can you talk to them? Can we set up a time to come and talk to you? So we need to do a better job in putting those things together in a place where folks can access it.
But we talked a little bit about the whole issue, and you listed that. I think was the second thing, Dr. Perkins, you said was the issue of gun violence. In Indianapolis, we have seen over the last 8 years the highest level of violence that we have seen in the history of this city, whether it be homicides, murders, stabbings, or non-fatal shootings. And it continues to escalate. I think we're just a few homicides away from hitting 200 homicides for the 4th year in a row. And I ask you this too, Trustee Johnson, what more can be done in our community to really have a conversation about this issue within our community? And what are some of the things that you would like to see done from the council level? I think probably, and I'm a little biased, so let me get that out here front. I believe more in the bottom-up approach where it's driven from neighborhoods and neighborhoods, whether it be churches, whether it be grassroots organizations, faith-based groups, residents, neighborhood associations are a key part of the strategy and the planning to deal with violence in their neighborhoods. I like it more so than the top-down approach. So that's kind of my bias. I think Indianapolis has been more effective, when we had that bottom-up approach where we involved neighborhoods and all of the stakeholders in the neighborhood.
I I agree with you 100% on that, Reverend Harrison. I also believe that it starts with the community relationships, the partnerships, the stakeholders. Even at the trustee's office, what I have been able to do was make sure that the HOAs, they have their meetings there monthly and weekly, and that's a platform for the communities and the surrounding, neighborhood associations to all come together and share what they can do for, crime prevention. We have really worked, I'd say we are blessed because we have IMPD Northwest District in Pike Township. And so we're able to work closely with Commander Lewis and Officer Waterman and all the other, I would say, police officers and police individuals that are about the community. Commander Lewis lives in Pike Township, and so we have that base as well. The community is made up of leaders and individuals that are working for the good, but we also live in this community, we work in this community, and we want what's best for our communities. And so that's an area that I have really put a lot of focus in this with the HOAs. Had a meeting last night with an HOA. We got 3 coming up for this upcoming week. That's how busy that the trustee's office is as far as on the community side, opening up the doors, make sure that they have a platform to have their HOA meetings. And to me, it helps because more individuals are coming out now that they have a safe place, a haven where they can come and talk, meet with the officers in Pike Township and see what we can do. But it's all about community and neighbors. Everybody has to know each other. They have to have respect for one another. And we all have to work for the common good, go for the common goal that we're all trying to go for.
Are those conversations helping where residents are meeting with officers? And I wonder if it's just the command staff, or are they having a chance to meet with the rank and file, the officers that are actually patrolling the neighborhoods?
Yeah. They are, and
okay.
we also do our coffee with a cop once a month as well. So we're really trying to make sure that our police officers are there. They're in the community. You see them. You have hands on with them. Okay. And I think that's what it's helped with Pike. I mean, if you see our numbers. Now, we're not perfect, we have things going on in Pike as well, but I think what has helped us to keep it down to a minimum is the relationships that we have built, with the police officers and so forth in Pike.
Okay.
So can I just add a couple of things?
Yes.
I do absolutely agree with the trustee that we have a responsibility to continue to mobilize as a community to address this issue. But I also want us to acknowledge that this issue did not start overnight.
Right.
We did not get here overnight.
Right.
There are many larger cities than Indianapolis is dealing with the issue of violence. There are many cities that have done some very effective work in reducing gun violence, and we can look to them and see some of the things that have been effective in working in those cities. We cannot, and I agree with you, Pastor, that I believe in the working from the community level and working up.
Right.
But also, I think that the top down also have a responsibility, right? We live in a state right now where it is absolutely a cakewalk just to get a gun.
Right.
And so we're seeing more weapons on the street. We're seeing the access for deadly weapons, right, to just any and everybody. And so we have an obligation as a state to address that. Right. So the city of Indianapolis is feeling some of the repercussions of the decisions that we have made as a state. It does not void us of the responsibility, but we have to look at the top down and see what we need to do as state representatives in the state house that are making the decision around gun ownership and who has access to buying a gun, that we need to address that. Secondly, it takes all of us. From our elected official in the state house, our local elected official in city council, our mayor, our pastors, our community organizations, our nonprofit organization, and the business world to work together to resolve this issue. Our hope is to build a safe and livable community. It requires all of us to do that work, right? From faith leaders standing up, getting out of your pulpits, getting in the community, and reclaim our community. Right?
Absolutely.
There are so many churches, synagogues, mosques around the city of Indianapolis. Pastors, faith leaders, get out of the pulpit and reclaim your community. So we have a responsibility.
I would like to have, and maybe next time we can have a conversation about this whole issue of easy accessibility to guns. I often tell the story. My brother was killed at 21. I was 15 years old at the time in Louisville, Kentucky. It was easy for me to get a gun on the streets.
Absolutely.
And as I sought to revenge my brother who was killed, the people who killed my brother ended up coming to the wake, hugging my parents, pretending like they were grieving with the family when they had actually killed him. I'm not for sure we're having these real honest conversations about what's happening with Junebug and Pookie and what's driving it. I think a lot for me and my brother was the absence of our dad and the anger that we felt about that and being a victim of the street. So I would love to have a longer conversation about that, about those real issues and what I see with 10 Point in dealing with these young men almost every night on the streets and the issues.
Absolutely. I mean, and we have to address them because we see them coming through our school system.
Yeah, I know you do.
Right?
I know you do.
So we see our young people coming in from homes that might be a single parent home. They don't necessarily have the support because mom and or dad has to go out and work to provide. They're in communities where they're being exposed to things at an early age.
That's right.
They come through and I'll give you an example. And this is I'm going to be on my education soapbox. Just give me about 30 seconds.
All right,
Pastor.
go ahead, Pastor.
One of the statistics that help us to understand growth in violence in our community is early education or early start.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
If you have young people who are not exposed to education at an early age, so many of our black and brown students are entering into school at the first grade, and they're reading below grade level already.
That's right.
So by the time they get to the third grade, which is a year that we start testing and reporting test scores, they're already a year or two behind, because they did not have early childhood education. And so if we want to address the issue, Indiana, we need to invest in early childhood education and access to pre-K. Right. And so you get to the point where now you're a fifth grader and you're reading at the first grade or second grade level. Yeah. Now you're frustrated.
Right.
Because you are being outperformed by your peers and you're exposed to all the things that are happening in the community.
Right.
And so if we really want to, and that's why I said to us, it takes all of us.
That's right.
As a public school educator, we wrestle with it. And I told you, I spent my career, 24 years as an educator, 14 years as a principal. My entire 14 years as a principal, I served in alternative education.
Wow.
Because that was my call, right? To work with young people that are court involved, juveniles that are high risk. And what I heard whenever I would interact with young people, when I would interact with a family, you can trace it back to their early school experience. And so there's so much more that we need to do as a community to ensure that we don't get to the point where Junebug is 21.
That's right.
Yeah.
And now he owns 3 guns.
Right.
I was watching the news last night, and this broke my heart. 2 young black men at Ball State University got caught yesterday with 2 guns in their dorm room. Now, there are questions, many of us will say, well, why do they have the gun, right? They're in college, they're in a different space. But let's talk about what those brothers might feel about their safety.
That's right. That's right.
So don't think because we are placed in another environment, you automatically now become safe.
That's right.
We know that's not the case.
That's true.
So that's another opportunity for us to say, what's really going on?
That's right.
Why these 2 young men who are in higher education at the collegiate level feels the need to have a gun for whatever reason.
That's a conversation, Pastor, I would love to have with you and bring a couple others so we can really get into that all the time. Our time is up, but I want to thank you and Trustee Johnson for joining me today on Real Talk. I'm Rev Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring you more Real Talk about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and X. This is Rev Charles Harrison, and I pray that you have a blessed day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.